In this video, we'll be going over how to gain renown for the upcoming newest faction and sub-factions going to arrive when patch 11.1 launches on February 25th, which is at the weekly reset this coming Tuesday. And as a footnote as well, all the sources I'm going to mention, be it the weeklies, dailies, and one-time sources, are all going to be warband locked. For those who don't know what that means, let's say for example you've done your weeklies for the week, meaning using alts will not have them available. Or another example is you've completed the entire side stories and their quest lines, so redoing them on an alt or another character will not yield reputation at all. Now, before we talk about the sources, we want to clarify a few things. So we will have the main faction called the Cartels of Undermine, which will be a 20-track renown system, and attached to it are going to be 4 sub-cartels, which we can align ourselves with one of them every week. There are 2 more factions arriving in this patch, but I'll talk about them later in the video. During PTR, it initially seemed like the newest faction would work similarly to how it worked with the severed threads, but unfortunately, that is not the case. For those unaware, back then, once we've aligned ourselves with one of the 3 sub-factions, those being the General, the Weaver, or the Vizier, we were able to gain something called Splash Rep, which means when we gain reputation with the main faction, the other one would also get reputation. But with the upcoming main cartel and sub-cartels, they're going to be entirely separate in terms of leveling or ranking each one up. Once aligned with one of the 4 sub-cartels, we'll only be getting reputation for that sub-cartel alone, and completing activities and stuff will either only give us reputation for that sub-cartel we're aligned with, or exclusively give reputation for our main cartel, that being the Cartels of Undermine. Lastly, the sub-cartels will have the reputation system that we're all familiar with, meaning we will need to get a total of 42,000 reputation to get exalted. Now, it's also worth mentioning that while working for any of the sub-cartels, some activities will give reputation to both the main and the sub-cartel, while others only give reputation to either the main cartel or just that sub-cartel alone, so I'll be mentioning that as we move forward. Now we'll be going on to the sources of renown and reputation, starting with the weekly dungeon quest from Birgoth. So this one is going to be the one we pick up from Birgoth here in Dornegal, which will be updated along with patch 11.1, giving us the option to choose the Cartels of Undermine as one of the reputation rewards, giving us 1500 upon turning in. This will be a weekly quest for those unaware, and to complete this, we'll either want to use the follower dungeon tool to make it easy, or to do it with friends. To each their own on how they go about this, but once done, we just have to make sure that we're gonna choose the Cartels of Undermine as one of the rewards when we're turning in. As a PTR, this is the only weekly source of reputation we can get outside of Undermine. So now we'll be diving into stuff we can do in Undermine itself. So our next source of reputation will be from the 3 weekly quests we can pick up from Smax, who's located in the Incontinental Hotel. All 3 of these weeklies are tied to 2 of the unique events in Undermine, and upon completion, they'll give us 1,000 reputation to the Cartels of Undermine and 1,000 reputation to our aligned Goblin Cartel of the week. So we're looking to get up to 3,000 reputation in total for both the main and the sub-cartel. So before going about doing this, we should look to align ourselves with the cartel over at this NPC just across, and once done, we can start our weekly quests. So 2 of the weekly quests from Smax will require us to activate the start job, which is this remote icon hotkeyed by default to number 5 on our drive cart mounts. This will then give us a large arrow above our character indicating where we need to go to do an odd job, which will range from deliveries, defeating a bunch of mobs, taking down propaganda posters, or even recruiting the Undermine citizens to a cause. Additionally, we'll have this progress bar on our quest tab, so in order for us to complete this weekly, one of them will need us to do 10 jobs. As for the second weekly quest called the Urge to Surge, we'll need to complete a surge pricing event, which is attached to the drive cart mount. So for how this works, every hour on the half-hour point, so for example 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, etc., the event will start and last for 10 minutes. While the event is up, we'll get bonus Valor Stones and rewards from doing cart jobs, and while doing these, any other player completing cart jobs will contribute to this event's progress bar, rewarding us with better and better caches upon reaching certain checkpoints. To get credit and finish this weekly, we'll simply have to receive one of these caches or boxes rewarded from the surging price event. Since there are going to be a ton of people doing this upon release, we'll simply want to prioritize doing this as soon as the event happens, since later during the event the boxes will be harder and harder to get since we need to get more points, while the first box rewarded only needs us to get the progress bar to 10, which simply requires players during the event to complete 10 jobs collectively or by themselves if there aren't any at the moment. As for the third and final weekly quest from Smacks, we'll have to do 3 scrap jobs, which is an event that's marked on the map with this golden trash bin icon. And what we'll have to do is relatively simple for this one. We just have to speak to Carlo Greasegrind to start it, who is this goblin NPC at the scrap locations. Then we'll be given 2 minutes to dig up as many scraps as we can. Once done, we'll rinse and repeat 2 more times and be done with the weekly quest. Fairly straightforward. Now for the next source, they're going to be these side gigs. Each week we will have different NPCs that give them out, and they're located at the entrance of Undermine near the rockets. Each week we will have different NPCs that give them out, and they will be representatives or people from the 4 sub-faction cartels. Initially during PTR, it seemed like this was a once a week thing. Each of the side gigs will reward us with 100 reputation with one of the sub-cartels and 50 reputation with the Cartels of Undermine. Meaning from doing all 4 side gigs we can pick up from them, we can get up to 200 reputation for the main cartel and 100 for each of the 2 sub-cartels. It's worth mentioning that these will work with contracts as well, once we're either able to make the contract ourselves or have someone else craft it. So definitely get your hands on them when you can. As an additional source of rep, we'll be able to get our hands on contracts, I just mentioned this, once someone is able to make it or craft it themselves. Fortunately, the contracts will also work from doing world quests in Kazalgar, so Hallowfall, Ashkahet, Dornagol, and the Ringing Deeps. Now for our next source of reputation, they are going to be the world quests. So there's going to be a total of 8 world quests available, and of course a special assignment which can be done bi-weekly but will only be unlocked after completing 3 world quests. Now depending on RNG, sometimes you'll get 3 world quests that give us reputation, sometimes it'll give us 4, and upon completing the world quest they will give us 50 reputation with the Cartels of Undermine, while some of them can either give us an additional 150 reputation for that aligned cartel. So the takeaway from this is that not all of the world quests will have a reputation reward upon completion, but if we have a contract active, we'll at least get something for putting work in. Now about that special assignment I mentioned earlier, this will work the same way as they did in previous zones. So we'll just have to complete 3 world quests first, then we'll be able to participate and complete the special assignments, which will give us 200 reputation to both our aligned cartel and the main cartel faction upon completion. Our next source of reputation is going to be from completing Bountiful Delves. Now during PTR, we received 1000 reputation for the Cartels of Undermine from a Bountiful coffer after completing one of the 2 new delves related to Undermine. So they are Side Street Sluice and Excavation Side 9. So take it with a grain of salt that this source will heavily rely on whether or not if one of the 2 new delves are bountiful, which will give us a chance of gaining that reputation. Our next source of reputation is going to be from the elite rares and something called bounty rares. In total, there are 5 elite rares which all have their respective spawn areas, and they're quite difficult to solo, meaning it would require a group to take them down, unless of course you're a certain class or spec that can solo tough enemies. Now each of these elite rares can give us 50 reputation to the Cartels of Undermine, and there's going to be 5 of them in total. The elite rares can be seen by players when they open the map, so it'll be open to everyone, but keep in mind that only one will be up at a time, and once one of them is down, the other will spawn shortly afterwards. Now about those bounty rares, there's going to be 5 of them, and in order to spawn one of them, they'll need us to be affiliated with a certain cartel and have it at Renown 6 before even being able to start the event and spawn that rare. One of these bounty rares, they will reward us with 100 reputation with the Cartels of Undermine and 150 reputation to our aligned cartel of that week. And as a footnote, we don't have to be of that bounty rare's aligned cartel in order to gain reputation. So for example, if for the week we chose Steamwheedle but the bounty rare that we took down is from Bilgewater, we don't have to be of Bilgewater in order to actually gain reputation from that rare. All we'll really need is someone of that sub-cartel to spawn it before tagging the boss in order to get reputation. I hope that made sense. Now you might have noticed that there are only 4 sub-cartels I mentioned, and each bounty rare is affiliated to one, but there's 5 of them in total, because there's a rare in particular that is bound to the Darkfuse Solution cartel, which currently as of PTR we have no clue on how to start on this sub-cartel or how to farm for this rep, so we'll leave it at that. For the 11th and final rare, it's going to be the Gallagio Garbage, which only spawns from doing the activity called Scrap. So during PTR, we were able to spawn it after excavating or digging out pieces of trash. But while we were attempting to replicate spawning it, we were unable to do so. Before, the scrap meter used to require us to dig up 1,000 pieces of trash, and that would require us to spend about 5 minutes doing this. But during the last few changes of PTR, they instead lowered the number of trash that we need to dig up down to 200, and we'll only have 2 minutes to do this. Once this patch goes live, hopefully it'll be a lot clearer on how we can spawn this rare, since it has a chance of giving us the Salvage Goblin Gazillionaire's flying machine. And on top of that, we can get 20 reputation to the Cartels of Undermine. Our next source of reputation is going to be from the chat list, but in order to gain reputation for this, we'll have to be Renown 13 with the Cartels of Undermine in order to unlock it. What we'll have to do is speak to this machine upstairs at the Intercontinental Hotel, and what we'll want to do is ask for a chat list. With it, we'll want to complete at least 4 of the to-do list tasks to be able to hand it in to either the machine again for Valor Stones or to our aligned cartel's quartermaster. So to gain that reputation, we'll go to our quartermaster and we'll convert that completed chat list for one of these bags, and upon opening one of them, we'll be able to earn 500 reputation with that aligned cartel, but not for the main cartel. Additionally, with this chat list, it is going to be flagged as a weekly source. During PTR, we used to be able to get more chat lists by using our alts, but this will most likely be changed or fixed once it goes live. Lastly, chat mentioned that we can get more than one chat list by giving it a contract. Now, we were not able to figure out what kind of contract chat was talking about, but if this is the case, then this chat list weekly source will be quite valuable for reputation. Our last source of reputation to talk about is going to come from rares, like the normal ones. These will spawn quite quickly, and any of these 10 rares will give us up to 20 reputation with the Cartels of Undermine, and since this will reset every day, this will become our daily source of reputation for the main cartel. Now we will be moving on to the one-time reputation sources for the Cartels of Undermine, and the first and most prominent source is the campaign itself. With this, we'll start earning reputation only with the Cartels of Undermine after finishing the introductory questline that gets us to the new zone, Undermine. As a PTR testing, it doesn't give that much reputation at certain points of the campaign. During previous campaigns, the reputation that they rewarded was upwards of 2,000 or 2,500, but as a PTR, we are not gonna get that much. Next up are the side quest lines or optional storylines of Undermine. There's a total of 13 of them, with each of them rewarding either 125 reputation or 200 reputation with the Cartels of Undermine. Keep in mind that these are rewarded after we finish this optional storyline, and this will also give us credit to the achievement Sojourner of Undermine. Additionally, we'll also be able to get 3 more one-time quests that require us to complete the newest dungeon, Operation Floodgate, and to complete both of the 2 new delves. Each of these, upon turn-in, will award us with 500 one-time reputation. For completing all 3 of them, we will be getting a total of 1,500 reputation with the Cartels of Undermine. Now, before we move on, we wanted to include 2 more factions in this Renown guide. Though we were not able to test them during PTR, with data mined information from Wowhead and a few other sources, here's what we were able to gather. So I've already mentioned this cartel before. This is going to be that 5th secret cartel, and this is called the Darkfuse Solutions. Like we previously mentioned, there is currently no known way to ally ourselves with the Darkfuse, but from data mining, we'll apparently need to farm and turn in a new currency called market research. Aside from that, we don't have that much information about this 5th secret cartel, but speculatively speaking, we'll most likely get access to the Darkfuse cartel after clearing the final campaign chapter, which we don't even get access to until we finish the entire raid, which will be time gated, so most likely we won't be getting stuff done for the Darkfuse solution until the end of March or the beginning of April. Now for the last faction in this video, it is going to be the Gallagio Loyalty Rewards Club, which is a renowned track as well, with 20 levels tied to the Liberation of Undermine raid, which is set to provide us with a ton of perks and gear. As for how we'll gain reputation with the Loyalty Club, it'll be exclusively done during the raid. Now the difficulty won't matter, so LFR, normal, heroic, mythic, the reputation given won't change, but it is noteworthy that we will be time gated for this Renown. So at the start of the raid, everyone will be at Renown 1 and we can progress up to Renown 2 but no further. We'll have to wait for each weekly reset for that cap to be increased by 1 additional Renown level each week. And if players do fall behind, the catch-up system will be in place to give a faster progress to those players that were left behind in order to catch up to the current weekly cap. As for sources on how much reputation we can get, the raid offers a total of 5,000 reputation, which is the equivalency of 2 renown levels. And these reputation will be given from defeating bosses and taking down certain lieutenants in the raid. Now, as a footnote, there are also going to be the return of Paragon caches, so each of the 5 cartels will get a Paragon cache. For those unaware of how these work, once we've reached Exalted with one of the sub-cartels, for example Bilgewater, we'll need to gain an additional 10,000 reputation with them in order to receive 1 Paragon cache from that sub-cartel. They'll be called troves in this case. From these, we'll get a ton of gold, more resonance crystals, 1 or 2 pieces of miscellaneous mechanica, which we can use to purchase 3 bind on equipped mounts over at the Vatworks from Skedgit Cinderbanks, and we also have a chance of getting a Paragon mount. For the Bilgewater Cartel, we can get the Bilgewater Bombardier. For the Venture Co, we can get our hands on the Venture Coordinator. For the Blackwater Cartel, we will have a chance of getting the Blackwater Bone Crusher. For Steamwheedle, we'll have the Steamwheedle Supplier. And finally, from the Darkfuse Trove, we have a chance of getting the Bronze Goblin Wave Shredder. So that's about it. With that amount of reputation we can get each week, we're looking at quite a long time to max out our Renown to 20, both the raid and the main cartel factions, and as well as for the sub-cartels. These will take quite a while too, unless Blizzard makes another last-minute change that either allows some of the sub-cartel reputations to splash to others, or give us a chance to run a few things on our alts for additional rep grinding. Now let's have a recap or an estimate of how much we can get each week, so you'll have a better idea of how much time you will be sinking into this. For completing the whole campaign, we can look to get roughly at around 10,000 reputation to the Cartels of Undermine, which can take us all the way up to 4 renown levels at least. Now keep in mind, in PTR they changed the amount of reputation we can get for completing the campaign, so we're not too sure as to how much reputation each segment or each milestone in the campaign will give. From all the repeatable sources, we can collectively get 12,300 for the main cartel and 5,300 rep for one of the sub-cartels we're aligned with the week. That's if we're looking to do every possible thing we can do in day 1 during that first week. So if we decide to do every possible thing we can do to earn renown levels in a day, we can roughly look at around 12,300 reputation plus campaign rep, so that's roughly around 5,000, 6,000. So that's about 18,000 rep for our main cartel and 5,350 for our aligned cartel. And if we're doing alt stuff, like for example the checklist or the bountiful delves, then we're looking at a bit more than at around 6,000 reputation for our aligned cartel of that week. So with those numbers in mind, we'll get quite a big boost after completing some of the campaign. And if we complete every possible activity we can on week 1, we can fast track our renown all the way up to perhaps 6 or even 7. And once the one-time sources are out of the way, we'll really only have the weeklies and dailies to grind this main cartel up to max, which can potentially take up to a couple months, maybe 1 or 2, since we can't use alts to gain additional reputation for that main cartel. But that's about it for the video. Thank you for watching the video. Said that already. See you in the next one.